All right. Yeah, 12:02, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started because I know we have a pretty full presentation today. But good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, What's Up in Downtown Westminster. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. A few logistics before we get underway. We are using the Teams platform today, so if you aren't familiar with it, note that everyone should currently be in listen-only mode, meaning you can't connect with us using your camera or your microphone, but you can using the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a quick hello message in here. So if for any reason you aren't sure where that lives, hopefully it should ping for you, and then you'll know where that is. So that being said, as we go through our webinar, if you have questions, please feel free to drop all of them in that chat box for us. We are going to wait until after the presentation during the Q&A to answer those. We should have about 10 to 15 minutes for that. But as you have them, as we're going through, definitely feel free to drop those in. I will go back to the beginning and sort through your questions and make sure that we get as many of those answered for you as we can before we reach our hour and we get to 1 o'clock. Last but not least, we are recording this webinar. And after we conclude, a copy of it, along with a copy of the presentation, will be posted to the Economic Development website. Next slide, please. There we go. Now that that's all out of the way, my name is Shelby Wood, and I work for the City of Westminster in the Economic Development Department. And my job is to help develop programs like this in order to help support our small business community. We are wrapping up our second year of these virtual trainings and webinars with the goal of trying to help communicate resources and remain connected with you and your business. We've hosted a variety of webinars on city-specific topics, so things such as homelessness, sales and use tax, workforce resources, and now this one on the happenings in downtown Westminster. But we've also partnered with the North Metro Small Business Development Center, also known as the SBDC, to host a variety of topics more geared towards your business, so things like financials and marketing. I wanted to make a plug that we do have a follow-up to this webinar, a part 2 that's happening next week, where we'll actually be on site downtown touring some of the projects that we discussed today. So that tour is going to be held on the morning of Wednesday, September 28th from 7:30 to 9 a.m. So that's in the morning. So if you are interested in participating for that walking tour, please RSVP directly to me at the email address that I have listed here. I want to note again that these recordings and presentations are all posted to the Economic Development website that's listed here also on this slide, to a training library, including the ones from the SBDC. And these trainings and webinars are free and will be ongoing, so keep your eyes open for new topics in the months to come. So the purpose of our webinar today is to learn about what's going on in downtown Westminster. We have with us Economic Vibrancy Manager John Burke and Senior Landscape Architect John Van, who will both share the history around the acquisition of the old Westminster site, the vision and implementation, current projects, long-term planning, and development of the site. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to John Burke to kick us off.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Shelby, for that warm introduction. And you have John Burke, Economic Vibrancy Manager for the City of Westminster. And we'll be talking about downtown Westminster along with my counterpart, John Van from Parks, Rec, and Libraries today. So good news for you. If you have any questions, just ask John, and one of us will decide who to answer. So we'll get right into it. And we will have some time at the end of the presentation to discuss any questions that you may have. So let's just dive right in. So in anybody in real estate, you always know location, location, location. And I would just tell you that the downtown Westminster site is one of the most ideal locations, particularly on the US 36 corridor. We're about 11 miles from Denver Union Station. That Flatiron Flyer, I think, is about a 15-minute ride, direct connection from the Westminster, the Sheridan Station RTD. And then it's also about 16 miles to Boulder. Again, that Flatiron Flyer will get you a couple stops up to Boulder in about 20 minutes. So great proximity. I also mentioned this slide. That Sheridan Station that's right there on US 36 near Sheridan, there's over 500 buses a day. Now, these are all pre-COVID numbers, but that was one of the busiest RTD stops in all of their systems. So just incredible because of that proximity to both Denver and Boulder. A lot of people may not want to live in Denver or live in Boulder, but want to live in Westminster and then be able to easily commute down the corridor to either location. So, I do a number of these presentations, and I always like to say we're not as dense as Denver, but we're not as nutty as Boulder. We're a little bit of both, a little nutty, a little granola, a little bit dense, and that's perfect for the city of Westminster. I also wanted to note, I know I see Deborah Basket's on this call from the city as well. And so we've been working collaboratively with RD on a future commuter rail stop right adjacent to downtown Westminster near 88th and Harlan. And again, RTD is commissioned a study for that, and hopefully we'll see that extension of the rail system and also a peak service that we could talk about at some other program later on what that might look like down the road. But for now, we'll stay focused on downtown Westminster. So many of you, when I do these live, I always like to ask, okay, how many people remember the mall, used to, shop there, hang out there, play in the game room there, work there. And it's always funny, no matter how big the audience, there's at least a half a dozen to a dozen. Yeah, Trevor, I see you raising your hands, right? Is that, there are people who live there all the time. Like I was in the game room hanging out, having fun. My wife actually worked at Things Remembered back in the day. One of my favorite places to go was Spencer's. I mean, there was so much of that community engagement that, growing up in the area, this was the place to meet people. We'd say, hey, I'll meet you at the mall. And that was just a community gathering. In addition to shopping and everything else that you do in the downtown or the old Westminster Mall site. So again, it was a place to be, right? We do presentations, the police department would go out and connect with the community. Again, you see pictures of just gathering performances, school performances. We're having the center courts. There's such a love for this food court, kind of area you see here with the balloons, right? The balloons were they're so nostalgic. And John Van will talk in a little bit about how we're trying to bring back some of those elements into the new downtown site. The bottom picture on the right, I always got to point this out, the Easter Bunny, this is right before the mall closed. And I'm not saying his little happy little ears look very sad in that picture, but if I was to expand that photo, you'd actually see a closing store behind it. So even though this was a vibrant, energetic place to be back in the late 80s, 90s, it really started to decline. And so what I'll show you on this slide is here's a picture from the city-wide sales tax collections, Westminster Mall being in that very bottom green area, that bottom teal. That's the revenue that the city received in sales tax only from the Westminster Mall. And then the remaining gold bar was what the city received from every other retail center in the city. And as you can see, we peaked around 1999 with around $8 million in revenue sales tax a year. And then it just continued on this slow decline until we ended up acquiring the mall back in 2012. And one of the big things that happened is, if you all who kind of grew up in the area, 2001, that was when the Flatirons Mall opened up in Broomfield. And quite frankly, as you can see, that was the beginning of the end of the Westminster Mall sales tax. And so the city had to do something, because as a city who is dependent upon sales tax, I think John Presner's on here, we're about 67% dependent upon sales tax. 67% of the whole general fund comes from sales tax. And so without that coming to the city, we had a problem and we needed to do something about it. So with any sort of a redevelopment choice, you have my favorite, which is the top left, kind of do nothing. You just let it be, and it'll kind of just go through its cycle of decline and ultimately redevelopment in whatever shape or form it is. On the top right, partial demolition. So maybe you demolish part of it, like we're seeing sadly right now. Anybody who knows the Flatiron Mall, that's what they're doing, right? They're doing some demolition of the old, I think it's Nordstrom's, and they're building multifamily housing up around this. So they're doing partial demolition in addition to keeping most of the mall intact. Or bottom left, adaptive reuse. If you've been to any other, I would say, declining mall across the US, hey, by the way, I always forget to mention this, but the Westminster Mall actually made the cover of Dead Mall magazine. So I don't know if you guys subscribe to that, but literally it's on the cover like, this mall is dead. And there are dozens, if not hundreds across the US of malls that are in decline and are failing. But you'll see the adaptive reuse. So if you walk through one of those malls, you'll see all of a sudden these little pop-up, Halloween stores or fitness places or, different craft type of stores. Those typically aren't your high-end sales tax generating department stores. And so we didn't think that that was a great idea too, to start to adaptively reuse that. So instead, we chose the bottom right, which was just a total fresh start. And in fact, we weren't the only ones excited about that. In fact, I think there were hundreds, if not 1,000 people that showed up to the demolition of the mall after this city had acquired it. And people loved it. Again, there was such a community gathering around this. I know hopefully Mona Shuri is on here, one of my counterparts on the downtown site that will be both touring next week. If you guys want to join us on the walking tour. But, the trays from the food court, bricks, all these things people literally collected and took home as memorabilia because of how much they really just loved going to the old Westminster Mall. And I think there's also some excitement about what will be next. And so the city started working on a number of public outreach, talking to the community, talking to the leadership, and trying to understand what do we want this thing to be as we continue to or consider a redevelopment. And so some of the key themes were a place to connect people to each other and their community. Again, it wasn't just about shopping, it was about community gathering and connection. Downtown Westminster will act as the civic, cultural, and economic core of the city, a place of innovation, creativity, and growth where sustainability, technology, inclusiveness are implemented into the physical and cultural environment. And then importantly, this last statement developed over time, one block at a time. The reason I say that was important is that this site, as under our leadership with our current interim city manager, Jody Andrews, when we first were visioning this whole redevelopment, it was the curation of a single block at a time with fee simple transactions. So instead of one single owner over 100 acres, you'll have 100 owners over that 100 acres, which means never again in the history of the site will you ever see it completely scraped and redeveloped because every individual owner has a piece of that property. And so we started down a path of identifying, so what would this redevelopment look like from a mixture of residential, office, commercial, accommodations, entertainment. And so we started working with master developers on, we as a city would just sell the property, walk away, hopefully it gets done really well. Well, unfortunately, after every single one of those conversations, we could not meet vision alignment with these developers. In fact, you may also look at the time frame, 2009 through 2015. This was right on the heels of the Great Recession. I mean, there was zero capital dollars going into particularly things like a mall site. So we had talked to the Brookfields, the GGPs of the world, and every one of them went down a path of, yeah, I think we could do this. And ultimately, they couldn't pull a trigger or it was just undervalued. They wouldn't deliver as much. Maybe we'd see more big box and wouldn't see the infrastructure and the amenities out of the gate. And so we ended up going to a block by block approach. And so myself and a couple others, actually now City Councilor Sarah Mello was part of that team, and Mona Shuri, we basically were given the task to implement this new vision. And so with that, I'm going to shift to John Van, who's going to talk about one of those, which is the park master planning and how we are advancing some of those. So I'll pitch to you, John, and just let me know when I need to advance slides.
All right, John, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's John Van. I'm a senior landscape architect here in the Parks and Recreation Department. And my role in this whole thing is to manage not only the park spaces that will be developed downtown, but also the streetscapes and pretty much anything that is kind of on the outside of all of our not box stores, but the big stores and everything else is going to happen downtown. So one of the things that happened when we took over the site was the realization that we didn't want this to be just all buildings. We didn't want this to look just like downtown Denver. We wanted to make sure that there was appropriate green space for people to be able to walk, take their dogs out, because we knew we were going to have residents down here. So very carefully, we retained several companies to help us master plan and think through what were the appropriate planning connections, appropriate landscaping, appropriate activities for the site. And so what we have is we have 18 acres that were set aside in various places through the downtown. And we basically broke those into four major components. We have our central square, or what we also call our plaza and pavilion. We have Center Park, we have East Park, and we have South Park. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those. Right now, I'm going to start and kind of go back up the list the other direction. South Park, which I don't have a slide for, is essentially the entire frontage along 88th from Sheridan to Harlan. South Park is going to consist of a lot of just open space. It has a planned promenade walkway through it. And we are currently in the phase, like what we would call our phase 2 design work for that, where we're going to be implementing some intimate sitting areas and some other fun features, including some sculptures and some really nice landscaping to augment what we already have put in place. So it's very exciting. Unfortunately, I don't really have any slides to share with you at this moment because we just got that part kicked off. But I would be looking for some improvements along 88th starting next year and probably to continue into the year or two after that as well. So South Park is great because it is, I mean, it is the entrance off of 88th, and that's what everyone is seeing. We all know how busy a road that is. So it's very important to us as one of our main entrance points to the downtown. If you've been, hopefully you've all been downtown or know where it is anyway. So the other part that has been completed to date is what we call our plaza and pavilion. That was approximately, I think, 3.5 acres. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what we've included there is a site that is going to augment and complement some of the retail that is being constructed around there. In the Aspire Hotel, there will be coming this spring or this summer, next summer, I should say, an open, not an open air, but a marketplace indoors, which will allow people to, do some shopping, get some food, come outside into the park and enjoy it, play in our fountain, and have nice family activities and just really serve as a central core to that commercial area right there. So yeah, we've built the pavilion. We've had several events there that I can talk about a little bit later, and it's already started being a focal point of the downtown, and we hope to expand on that a little bit more as we go on. So I think, John, we can move on to the next slide. So with this master planning effort, again, I said we were involved with many other different landscape architecture companies, planning companies. And what I want to do is highlight for you where we are today. So on this slide, you'll see the Plaza Pavilion, which is pretty much complete. On the right, you'll see there's some plain green squares there, and the blue rectangles that are kind of going on an angle are our Eaton Street medians, which will be continuing construction next year. But on the left there is Center Park. Center Park is almost 4 acres of land, and we have envisioned this to be a feature that will complement not only retail, but our residents in the area, as well as our commercial office space. So what we're trying to do with this 3 acres is accommodate and be very flexible. Accommodate users of all kinds, all ages, and be flexible in what kind of events, what kind of fun things we can, excuse my phone, that we can have downtown and help foster the sense of community for the city of Westminster as well as downtown. So as you look at Center Park there, and I think I have another slide we'll bring up, we have some very fun things going on. We're talking about bringing in another splash pad area, kind of like in that lower corner there where you see, and on this slide that John has brought up, we're trying to create different pocket areas where activities can be broken up, not just have one giant park where everybody is concentrated into one place, but we want to have intimate spaces. In the lower right here, you see one of our suggestions of swings, where you can go on a swing and actually watch people interact with the park and walk around. So that'll be a nice feature. If you look on the left, you can see what one of our aerial views is of the park. I can't wait for it to look like something like this, but we're looking at shelter areas where we can have tables and chairs for bringing out lunch. We're going to have areas where kids can come with their families and have fun and do some play, small playground type of things. I want to go back up to that right slide, though. One of the fun things, and I think you notice this, if you go down in the pavilion, our water is just an exciting feature, period, in Colorado and Westminster. And so we want to create yet another playground based around water. And what you can see in this picture is kind of the fun part, that the greenish orb type thing there is one of our features that John alluded to earlier this, will eventually, this isn't the finished design yet, but what we're trying to do is bring the balloons back into the park where they originally were in the first place. So throughout the park, we're going to have various visions of balloons. Some may be more complete than others. I mean, we intend to have a balloon in the play area where, the kids can pretend they're actually in a balloon, come down some slides and things. All of these will be various different shapes, sizes, and colors. If you look at the drawing on the left, you can kind of see in the far left a couple of bigger ones in that far corner as an icon to the site as you enter in. So yeah, we're really excited about that. We want to light this up and make this as lively as we can in the evenings, so people are attracted to the site to come down here, again, and share with our retailers and our residents down here. The other things that we're going to be looking into the park, John, can you back up real quick? Is that possible? Cool. What I was mentioning earlier about flex space. So if you look at the park design for Center Park right now on the left, you can see that maybe that number 10 there on the left-hand side. That area of lawn could be an art show, with 20 or 30 or 40 tents, leaving the center area open, which would be possible for larger events, music events, things of that nature. And then all these other little areas where you see these numbers are all private little areas where you can have small groups, a little yoga on the lawn. One of the things we're going to include down here is a dog area. If you've been downtown, much like the rest of the city, we have lots of dogs. And, we are working towards a longer term solution, which will most likely be in the East Park area, which is the long linear park that you see on the right-hand side of this slide. That is yet not in any kind of design at this point, but we've already identified many features that we want to be putting over there, including probably a larger dog area. The one here we have at Center Park, though, we know people are going to bring their dogs down here. They're going to want to go for a walk and see what's going on. So if you want to, we're going to encourage, because it's our rules, we want those dogs to stay on a leash. But everyone wants to let their dog run, maybe throw a ball for a few minutes. So we'll have kind of a small dog area where that would be able to happen. Other things will be, some really nice extensive landscaping, be very beautiful. And then lastly, I wanted to point out that kind of in that upper middle, we're going to have probably a small building that's going to house additional washrooms, possibly a small stage area to play into the, that plays towards the bigger lawn area. A lot of these concepts are still being fleshed out, but we have tried to meet, like I said, a lot of different needs. And the most exciting part of all this is, as you've seen with downtown, it's taken time to develop block by block. Well, this is the next block. This is going to be full under construction next year. We are looking to hopefully break ground as early as possible and have completion by fall of next year for our plantings and turf and things like that we want to put in there. It could carry into spring 24 because I don't want to make promises. We all know how construction and ordering things is nowadays and getting materials. I mean, it's been very rough. But that is our intended schedule, is we want to get in here. We want to get it done. We want to get it done in one phase and have this thing open while the town develops around it. So we're very excited for that. Go ahead, John, into our next slide. So along with that, we have another park that will be coming online next spring. It's very small. I'll be perfectly upfront and honest about that. We call this West Park, and it's located along Harlan Avenue. If you've driven through the downtown, you will see that we have some townhomes and condominiums. Correct me again there, John. It's a site that has got both on it. What's going up now, I think, is all townhomes, I think. And then the other half, which will be construction in the next month or two, will become condos and townhomes, filling up the entire block, except for this triangular piece. Again, it's not a huge park, but it has a purpose. It has a purpose for these specific residents right here. It serves as a beautiful entrance coming in off of Harlan to the downtown. And we'll have a small piece of play equipment there and just an area for people to get out and enjoy without everybody having to descend on Center Park. So this will be really neat. And the one thing that I actually don't have a slide here is that this will be constructed in conjunction with what we call a WUNRF, which is a pedestrian plaza that will actually run right down the middle of the townhome condominium complex. It's an alley that is designed for emergency vehicle traffic, but will be shut off other times, and it will have areas to sit and have a little lunch, walk through it. It'll be lit at night, with security lighting and things of that nature, some possible games in there and a lot of landscaping. So maybe next time we can show you that slide, or maybe next week John can bring a slide of that as well. But this will be very exciting to have this block completed, where we can see, some completion and how these ideas are coming to fruition. We're very excited about this, and again, this will be done by hopefully end of spring into summer of next year. So we'll really be able to see quite a few neat things going on. And I guess that's about it, John, for parks right now.
Yeah, no,
we
we'll
get something else?
We'll bring you back up in a minute. Can I talk about some of the activation things that have happened over this past summer as well? And I think I'd actually do have one slide that shows that maybe an image of that Wooner. So we'll cover that as well. But like we talked a little bit earlier, so why build a downtown? Identity, quality of life, right? This is the center of gathering. You think about your local subdivision community that you live in now. This really was for the entire city, and quite frankly, around the region, is that we want to create that place that you can gather, that you can start build identity, that it's not the same old, it's something different. Economic growth is a big part of that, because if we're not able to generate revenue from this site, it's not going to be sustainable long term. One of the things I'll talk about a little bit later is where we identified how to capitalize on some of that investment opportunity in the downtown through a return on that investment. We also talk about smart growth, again, next to the transit areas, next to core business. We have, I think, well over 500,000 people that live within 5 miles of the downtown. So it's already located in a great space. We just want to create what is that next opportunity for people to be there. So as we start to look at over the next 10 to 15 years, so we're into this project, actively 7+ years now. What we want to see is that full build out on that bottom left, and this kind of infographic shares the same, is around 2 to 3 million square feet of office, which frankly is bigger than we initially anticipated, around 1 million. I think we can easily hold up, 2 to 3 million. About 4,500 residents in the downtown, about 700,000 square feet of retail, which is less than the old mall had, about 1.2 million square feet in total. So we want to bring in, it's actually a little bit less, but a really high quality retail as well, which we'll kind of walk through who's out there today and who's coming next as well. 300 plus hotel rooms. Right now we got 125 key boutique hotel that's open. Mona Shuri is on here, as well as Stephanie Troll and others. We passed through City Council the entertainment district for not only downtown Westminster, but also the Orchard Town Center. And so we're able to have the ability, ultimately, hopefully next summer, shut off some roads, have common consumption with beverages and food stations in the downtown. So that was a big move. Again, just to bring people and activate the site. Because the city owns the land, this LEED Silver, we actually require, as part of our purchase and sale agreements, that all the developers meet a LEED Silver minimum criteria for all their buildings, which again helps with energy efficiency, water consumption is reduced, etc. And just a really well designed buildings as you get into downtown Westminster. And lastly, access to mass transit. Again, as we're hopefully coming out of the pandemic, we'll start to see that ridership increase in some of our transit communities around the downtown side. So with that, here we go. This is what ultimately we would like to see in the downtown. What's kind of fun, if you look closely at this image, you'll see we actually have the actual SketchUp models of the buildings that have been constructed to date. In fact, we got to refresh this again, but right on the bottom of this slide is 88th Avenue, and you'll see the Ascent at Westminster, which was one of the first buildings that opened up. There is a rooftop pool if you haven't been inside. Hey, by the way, there's always an open opportunity for those who would like to go take a tour of these buildings. You can always walk in, talk to the general managers, ask for a tour. City staff, we had previously done that while they're under construction, but now that they're operational, we're kind of excited just to go out and see the finished product as well. The parking garage, Eaton Street apartments, etc. So kind of fun to see what this thing ultimately will look like at full build out. I mentioned earlier the financial impact. So here's a kind of a chart, a bar graph of the different revenue streams. And this isn't all of them, but this is just three of the most important ones. The gray bar at the very bottom is our urban renewal authority, which creates that tax increment of financing out of the site. And you'll see that starting to grow over time, as well as we, back in 2021, our finance department presented the General Improvement District, the GID, which is a revenue source that goes right back into the downtown to take care of things like what John was talking about, park maintenance, or our parking garages, the streetscapes, some of the infrastructure. It can also handle some of our police and fire. Those are funding sources that come off of this site that go to the city that can then be allocated back to various departments to go handle the maintenance and operation of downtown facilities. And then the blue bar on the very top is that 3% general sales tax. So you see, as that starts to compound, as I look out to 2038, that's just over $20 million a year that the city will see. And that goes on for perpetuity, except for the URA. That tax increment financing does sunset after 2038, so that'll drop down. But generally speaking, this is what we look at to say, okay, the investment the city's put in today, we do have this return that's going to come off this site. So where we are, how did we get from there, right? The old mall, the balloons, famous footwear shoppers kind of walking around to there, to the existing. This is an aerial photograph that I think actually Sean McCartney in our planning division, he's got a drone he's been having some fun with, and I love it because he's taking some great shots for us. But as this one, I think just here in August of this past year, took this one. You can see Eden Street in the foreground, the parking garage, JCPenney's, as you look west towards the mountains. So we think about how do we get from the mall to the next step of redevelopment opportunities. One of the key things that's different than most other parts of the city is we have a downtown specific plan. We also have one for the Westminster Station area plan. So those two focus areas, because the city either A, owns some of the land, which we do in all the downtown, or in the Westminster Station, we own a few of the parcels, but we also have a regulatory approach that as long as developers comply with that specific plan, we have the ability to administratively approve many of those projects. And with that, it's a speed to market for our private development partners that we have more upfront review. We typically have an architectural review team that reviews these plans to make sure that they're not all cookie cutter. And I'm not going to talk badly about things like Arista up in Broomfield, but if you drive through there, kind of every building looks kind of exactly like all the others. Not a whole lot of interest, okay? We're really trying to be focused on creating a variety of ownership ranges and uses, the vision alignment with the developers. Some of the projects we have restrictions that we put on to create some affordable workforce housing. A couple of these projects do that. Again, LEED Silver certification, and the very specific use of any incentives to make sure we get to curate the right type of development that doesn't compete with each other. So, kind of a funny story on that. I had one pizza guy say, "Hey, we want a restriction on any other pizza establishments in all of downtown." It's like, dude, I'm sorry. Your pizza may be awesome, but we're not going to put a covenant restricting every other pizza place. So we work with the retailers to make sure that we don't have competing interests, particularly as we start up. Ultimately, we could have 15 different great pizza places, and that's perfectly fine. But we want to make sure we curate the right ones on the front end so that they are successful. So from a balanced investment strategy perspective, here's an image early on when all you see is all the horizontal infrastructure, right? So road, water, sewer, regional stormwater quality included with that. And then our second city-owned parking garage is about 888 parking stalls in that garage that services primarily JCPenney, Eden Street, and future office as well. That's going to be allocated inside of that garage. With that, we took out $32 million to buy out the mall. And demolition, everything else included with that, $42 million in certificates of participation. That's what that COP stands for. So that was a way for us to bond for some of these monies to go out and build all the infrastructure up front. And then incentives, infrastructure and amenities. And then, like I just discussed a minute ago, was on the return on that investment from not only land sales, which wasn't even in that bar chart, because we do sell these off block by block, lot by lot. And so that is a revenue stream to the city that we reinvest into the site in a different variety of forms, the tax increment and also the GID, the General Improvement District, I talked about a minute ago as well. So with that, that'd be kind of fun, just talk about where we are now, and we'll wrap this up in maybe about 5 or 6 minutes, and then hopefully leave some room at the end for questions. And I saw a couple hit the chat box a minute ago that we can address as well. I think Shelby's going to help us navigate those. But as you can see, from this graph, there's a number of projects that are either completed, under construction, or under contract and planned. And I'll walk through each of those at a pretty high level. And again, if you have further, more detailed questions, please do either drop me in the chat box or feel free to follow up with us directly. So of the downtown, we ultimately want to see again 5,000 residents, about 750,000 square feet of retail, 2 million square feet of office, 300 plus hotel rooms. Again, some of the details I covered a little bit earlier. And then here's some of the existing retailers that have now opened. So Tappenberger, if you haven't been there, it's fantastic, amazing. 100% chiropractic, Hope Pediatric Dentist, Lash and Company, Tatter Cover Bookstore that just opened this past year, Alamo Draft House, the Origin Hotel, Sweet Bloom Coffee Roasters, which is by far the most, that place is always packed. And that literally is more like a kind of a co-working space. I mean, you walk by there and there's always somebody in there meeting, having coffee, working. It's absolutely fantastic. And then Famille, which is a Colorado brasserie, basically a French restaurant that's absolutely amazing. If you haven't been in there yet, not super expensive, but amazing food, absolutely delicious. So I encourage you, haven't been over to Famille, please do stop in. And then maybe I'll just kind of walk through each of the projects that are currently open. Alamo Draft House, if you haven't been there, a really fun environment. They have 9 different screens. They do have Pandora's Box, which is a restaurant. You can go in and actually have a drink, grab something to eat, have a snack without going into the movies. So that's a great place with that little outdoor patio, indoor area as well, that you can go in there. We also may have a future retail or office rep, but right now they have a small outdoor theater that they may consider re-engaging that they did right as they opened in 2019, but sadly had to shut down during the COVID pandemic of 2020. But Alamo Draft House is fantastic. I always love the Art Deco appeal. I've had many people say, "Oh, wasn't this always here?" Like, no, this was a brand new tilt-up construction project just to make look retro and old. And again, my old counterpart, who's now current city councilor, Sarah Namella, literally drafted this up on a back of a napkin, and the designer out of Texas did a great job of delivering a really nice looking building. Eaton Street Apartments, this is one of the very first projects that opened up in downtown Westminster, and it's 100% affordable with 30 to 60% of the area median income, and it's a beautiful looking building. Amenities inside, workout area, kind of play area, things like that, a rooftop deck as well included with that. They are right now looking at, they had some of the service, commercial retail. Hopefully they'll get a couple restaurants engaged as well to open up on Eaton Street, which would be fantastic. Next one, Ascent Westminster. Again, that's home to Sweet Bloom and Tappenberger right on 18th Avenue. 255 units of residential, 22,000 square feet of retail, also LEED Silver certified. And with this one, we actually do have 10% of those units. So right around 26 of the units are required to have be rented out to folks who are making around that 80% or less of the area median income. And so this is a way to really help integrate those who are part of our workforce that are looking for a great place to live. Those units are available in this building. Next one is the Origin Hotel. I just threw this photo in there. This is a real photo that was taken probably, I would say, closer to 8-9 months ago now. You can still see snow in the foothills. But this is prior to Tatter Cover opening, but beautiful building, 125 room boutique hotel. And again, if you haven't been in there, they're more of a business traveler. So they have some of the bigger rooms. They actually have a room that has bunk beds in it for families that stay, things like that. Really great boutique hotel, chef-driven restaurant. Again, it was actually the former chef of the St. Julian in Boulder that came over and started up the Famille, made the menu, and it's absolutely, like I said, just amazing. There's also some event space in there, so they got a couple different conference rooms. So anybody who's looking for a nice place to host their corporate events, I think one of their ballroom maybe holds a couple hundred people, and then they have a small boardroom with probably about 20 people or so capacity in that one. But really nice hotel, and again, that connectivity with the Tatter Cover bookstore inside of there as well. Next one is the Aspire Westminster. Again, this opened up this past January. One of their first retailers, you see the top right, is Superfruit Republic. So if you're looking for, I always say this wrong, but the I think it's a bowls. The Acea fruit, they have really good food in there as well as drink. But again, the Aspire, 226 units residential, a lot of retail, 38,000 square feet of retail. And like John Van mentioned earlier, that edge of the center square is where the market hall is going to be. So Westminster Rally, which would be a food hall, will open up probably early summer next year. And so it's about a 12,000 of that 38,000 that'll host that, as well as they have LOIs and leases for 2 or 3 different restaurants that are going to front that the central square as well. Also LEED certified, 10% workforce housing included in the Aspire project as well. Next one, Westminster Road. This also opened up this past January. 274 residential units, 17,000 square feet of retail. They got some great restaurants starting to come in. I think a bank also in the mix. So they are actively working on leasing up their building, which is great. And both of those I just mentioned, the Ascent, or actually all three, Spire and the Westminster Row. Again, my colleague Mona Shuri just recently got some updated numbers, and I think all those are hovering around mid 80% to 90% occupied and or leased, which is great. So we're seeing a lot more people actively living and working in downtown. Oh, and by the way, for those of us city employees that are on this call, our new city manager, Mark Freitag, actually just leased out a residential unit here in the Westminster Road. So our new city manager will be living in downtown, which I think I'm super excited about, and maybe just a little terrified to make sure we keep things maintained and looking good in the downtown. But no, super excited. Great location for that as well. Next one. So John mentioned this, the townhome project. They are just finished up their first phase, which has 34 townhomes. Those will start to be occupied here October, November, December. They got some buildings that are opening up. That bottom left, this is what John was mentioning about the Westminster Woonerf. This is that pedestrian focus, but also can be used for emergency vehicles. But really interesting with the lighting, the landscaping. You think about it, this is your front porch and start to a way to connect with your neighbors in that community. So create these kind of pocket areas where you can build community within these developments. The next phase that just started construction will be the 17 townhomes. Oh, and the first condominium project in Westminster in well over 10 years. So there'll be 20 condos. That picture on the top left is an image of what that condominium project is going to look like. And that'll be right at the corner of, I think it's 90th and Westminster Boulevard, kind of that northwest corner. So that's where those condos are going to be. The next phase with the same developer, phase 3, we're calling it, is up on Block C7. This is on 92nd Avenue near Eden Street. So they'll also plan to bring in 34 townhomes there. Again, part of our development agreement requires LEED Silver on all these buildings. Now I'm going to talk about a couple new ones that you may have heard about previously. This one in particular, Marzek Fine Foods. We're having some fun with this. We're actually doing an adaptive reuse, the former US Bank building right at 88th and Harlan. So they're going to blow out one of the walls, take out the canopy where the drop boxes used to be, and there'll be an 8,000 square foot grocery and wine store, which will also require LEED certification of that building. So they're right now wrapping up, hopefully, their ODP, and we'll get in a building permit and start construction this winter for probably a spring of next year opening with Marzek Fine Foods, which they have currently 2 locations in downtown Denver. So we're super excited to have their team open up here in Westminster. Next, this is brand new. So this is hot off the presses. We actually will be going to the City Council / WEDA board here in November with this project. So this is going to be on Block B5 for those who know that area, but it's right on 90th and Westminster Boulevard, the northeast corner of that intersection. So this is just catty corner to Westminster Road on the north side of that. So there'll be, if you think about what's an active adult, primarily just age restricted, but they're really focused on the concierge of, what does this demographic look for? So it's things like, I'll say I could use this myself, IT person on staff that could help you set up your Roku and your DirecTV or whatever you want to have inside of that. So you have somebody available for that, or travel concierge that's, hey, I want to go visit the grandkids. We can help you do that. Or, dog sitting stuff. I mean, there's a bunch of things that they're going to really focus in on that demographic. And then primarily, it's, 55 plus. The market study that they've evaluated is really probably closer to 65 to 75 will be the primary target for this particular project, but all market rate in 15,000 to 20,000 square feet of retail. They do have a parking garage that's integrated within this project as well. So again, hot off the presses. Hopefully we'll get a nod of approval on this here in November and be able to move forward. But I just want to share that with this group. Next one, office development, active conversations with our office partner to go bring in. First building that you see here is their rendering of about 200,000 square feet of Class A office space. It's been a little clunky with COVID. We have been working with this team for the better part of 3 years now, and 2 of those obviously have been weird. And so we're trying to figure out what is the right timing to bring office to the downtown site. So stay tuned. These are absolutely active, very active conversations we're having right now. And then lastly, I'll just kind of close on my couple slides here with just some actual imagery of construction. This is, again, thank you, Sean McCartney. I don't know if he's on this call or not, but he's taking some nice little drone footage. Top right is the townhome project. This is taken back in August, and they're still making really great progress opening that up. Bottom right, the Central Square. Bottom left, the Origin Hotel. And then right top left is the the Aspire, which is right by Center Park. And you can also see their rooftop amenity deck on that project as well. So now, John Ben, I'm going to kick it back over to you to talk a little more about activation and events in downtown, particularly what we had over the summer, and then looking forward to this fall.
Okay, sure thing, John. So yeah, one of the questions I get often a lot is, well, what's going to happen to the events? I mean, over the last several years, COVID withstanding or notwithstanding, I mean, we've had a lot of big fun opportunities downtown. But as you can see this year, we've had a couple events. We've got some slides here. Top Taco was a really unique event that has come to Westminster, and they loved being here. This was a private run event that the city brought in to do just the extraordinary job that they did. If you had the opportunity to go there, it was a ticketed event, had 4,000 people attend. And for your ticket price, you got tacos and margaritas all day long and all night. It was just fantastic. And we are loving partnering with these folks, and we will continue. We're looking to continue that partnership as we move on. So somebody says, well, wait a second, that was where Center Park was. True, it is. That's where Center Park was. So this year, our cultural events committee is working with them to find another location. I don't want to say where it is because I'm not 100% sure, but Top Taco is looking to stay here in Westminster. We had a great time. They loved it here, and we'd love to be able to bring them back when our construction is complete for the following year. After Top Taco, then we had a really quick change of pace. Westie Brewfest. We all know how that usually happens out at City Park. Well, this year, because of rain, didn't happen so much. We needed another location for it. It was a little bit drier. So that came downtown and was very successful. Again, a ticketed event, a couple thousand attendees. And as you can see from these people, they had a great time. It was a fantastic place to be able to set up and afford all the amenities that they were looking for. It brought in a lot of attention to downtown, and really is one of those pieces of activation that we're looking for, that we want downtown to be proud of. We want to draw in people from across the city and also visitors as well for a sales tax base. And then lastly, what we got coming up, one more to go. This will be Westie Fest, October 22nd, a free event for the community. We'll have all kinds of things, games, Halloween treats, the balloon light up, and I know there's a better terminology for that, but it works for me. It'll be very exciting. We'll be bringing the balloons back, and pumpkin sales we'll have downtown, and just will be all kinds of fun and food. And so we're looking forward to that as well. And again, with those plans that we talked about earlier with Center Park, we're talking flexibility. We're trying to adjust to make sure we have spaces that will entertain and bring our community together. So they could be little events, big events. We're obviously not going to try and compete with the big, events of maybe downtown or Red Rocks, but we're going to have some cool things going on, and we will be activating this with different things all the way down to yoga in the yard kind of stuff. So we're really looking forward to the implementation of Center Park. And then, as you saw in the original drawings that we had put up on the board, East Park will be phenomenal when we get to that, when the amount of people downtown and the residential and office level has come in, we'll then be shifting on to East Park as well. So we're very excited. And from a Parks and Recreation Department to be able to offer this to our community, it's completely different. These are urban parks. This is not your typical suburban park. So we hope when we're all done, people come out and really enjoy this with us. That's about it, John.
Well, thanks, John. And Shelby, we're actually going to turn it back over to you. I know we got a couple questions in the chat box, but also feel free, anybody else that has questions, to drop those in there and we'll react accordingly. So Shelby.
Great, thanks guys. So like they said, let's jump into our Q&A. I saw a few come over. So if you have those lingering questions, we got about 7 minutes left. I do want to make a plug that we have a lot of city staff on our webinar today. So if you guys are okay with it, since this webinar was really kind of intended for our business community, I'm going to try to start kind of weeding through their questions first, and then we'll move to staff questions at the end if we have time. Right, so let's take a look here. Looks like Molly did include a link about what a moonroof is, if you were looking for some more information on what that is. Let's see, Jonathan Thornton, former city employee. Given the shift of corporate work to hybrid or all remote work, how has the downtown shifted regarding large office buildings and infrastructure for those employees who may not go to a large office?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Jonathan. So here's what I'd tell you. Nobody knows, right? I think that's the honest answer. But I will say this, there's a couple things that are happening. One, if you look in downtown Denver and even the Denver Tech Center, DTC, for those familiar with kind of the metro area, we're seeing a lot of those older stock of buildings, we'll call them Class B office space. They've kind of reached their lifespan. And so we're starting to see a lot of migration out of some of the central business district. And again, COVID was a brutal downtown Denver. I mean, if you have not walked the streets in downtown Denver the past couple of years, it's probably sadly a good thing because it's not been a very safe place. And so we started to see the migration of a lot of those corporate offices to the suburban markets, particularly when you can offer a Class A LEED Silver certified building where you have the latest and greatest in HVAC technologies, touchless elevators. I toured one of the recent buildings where there's no buttons inside the elevator. You only have an app on your phone and it gives you access to your floor only. Or if you're a guest, the concierge pushes the button for you electronically. So you go up to those security measures, the ability to actually have larger conference room, larger amenities. So how do you bring the office employee back into the office? Well, you make it feel more like home. And so you have, areas where, they're in, particularly with the office space that's proposed in our downtown, there's a huge room and area for different events. They could have, almost like a full kitchen, couches, workout facilities, things like that. So we're really starting to see that transition. Then importantly, because of this location between Denver and Boulder, the ability to commute to Westminster's, I'm sorry, anybody who, like myself, who grew up here, the amount of traffic on I-70, I-25, 6th Avenue is absolutely insane. And so for any other corporate company to say, hey, we want to locate in downtown Westminster near some of our employee base that actually have access to trails, 18 acres of parks in the downtown, 30 some, I can't even remember the numbers, John Ben, on, how many acres of open space and park. It's always the number one response for why people move to Westminster. So now you couple that with this, I'm not saying it's not a super urban dense, but it's right in the heart of the city where you still have access. It doesn't feel like you're in downtown Denver, but you can still have those office spaces near there. So again, time will tell, but I do believe everything we're hearing and seeing the market. And if anybody's reading out there, you're seeing a lot of CEOs are saying, we need you back in your seat, right? If you want a job, work hybrid. If you want a career, get back in the office so you can collaborate, so you can work with your colleagues. And again, these companies are paying good money for those empty office buildings, and so they have an incentive to bring people back in. So hopefully we'll continue to see that occur. Shelley?
Thanks, John. Jonathan said, thank you. Good presentation for both of you. Glad to hear about the progress. So I'm going to back up to Mario has a couple questions, so I'm going to go through them one at a time. Does the city have plans in addressing drivers constantly ignoring stop signs throughout downtown Westminster?
So yeah, the stop signs. So here's what I'd say. Right now, because I drive through there, a few times a week, and you're right, there are some people that blaze right through them, and I would say the large majority do stop at those. As we get more activity, I guarantee people are going to be more concerned about the pedestrians coming across, other vehicles. Again, there's not a whole lot of energy around there. If you go down Westminster Boulevard, you'll see probably more compliance with that. And so, if you're seeing specific issues, please do contact the city. Our traffic and, division and police department absolutely can be doing some enforcement out there. So we'll just continue to monitor that as the development occurs.
Thank you. His second question says, many of the park images you have shown have trees that are a maturity that could only be achieved decades from now. Has the city considered providing temporary shade for citizens and visitors, such as burlap/campus canopies, while those smaller trees grow?
Sure. Great question. And I'll come right back to it. We missed one earlier. A question from Stephanie. Will artificial turf be a component in Center Park? And yes, Stephanie, it probably will be in some areas. We have not determined exactly where it will be, but artificial turf is one of those things that does help hold up to a tremendous amount of use. So we are looking at it specifically or I should say scientifically in different areas. So answer is yes and maybe. I'm sure there will be some, but I'm not sure how much yet. Down to Mario's second question about shade. You're right. And we understand it. These pictures look great and they're made with trees from New England. These trees will not be this big when they go in. We are definitely looking at shade structures. We couldn't cover all the potential things that we're looking at for the downtown parks. I could tell you we're going to be installing shade shelters, the fabric ones in the plaza, because the plaza itself gets hot. Even though those trees are growing very well, we still know we need additional shade. So there in Center Park and also in like West Park areas and in the future East Park, yes, indeed, we will be looking at shelter, be it a permanent aspect or maybe even something more temporary till the trees grow bigger.
Thank you, John. I do want to acknowledge that we are coming up on our 1 o'clock time frame. We still have some questions on here, so I defer to both of our Johns if you guys are okay to continue questions for a few more minutes. So if there is anybody that is up against a time constraint, I want to acknowledge that for you. If you do have questions, definitely drop them in the chat. We will download this afterwards, and happy to circle back with you, or you can email one of the three of us directly, and happy to continue to answer any questions that you have. So Mario's next question is, the current developments for the townhomes and condos are very expensive, with the lowest being around $400,000 for a one-bedroom condo. Is the city considering affordable homeownership opportunities?
Yeah, again, Mark, great question. With that, because we as a city are selling the land to private developers, we have yet to get into ownership where we're restricting those price points. That is probably one of the most challenging and ongoing conversations, is how to create affordable opportunities in the city of Westminster. You can do things. I'll tell you this, the answer is yes. How we deploy it is still to be debated, understood from those economics and things of that nature. So it's an important issue for not only Westminster, but throughout the state. I mean, it's unbelievable, the housing prices and things like that. So difficult, but definitely there are some things out there. Affordable by design. I mean, there are some developers who we're talking to said, hey, let's design a building, an ownership residential unit that can hit a price point that works, that maybe we don't have all the bells and whistles like we're seeing for the newer buildings, but you have a really great high quality product that you can move into. So great question. And it's something that I think is going to be an ongoing conversation for many jurisdictions and, throughout the state of Colorado. And Shelby, I don't know if you want to I can hit a few of these. I see there's one really good one towards the end of the questions as well. I think we ought to hit. Did
you have a specific one that you wanted to skip to,
or do you want me to
keep through? Okay. Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
because we can address, Mario, you had a lot of really good questions and we can take those and just, hit you directly with some answers and responses, but, and just maybe looking at some other folks. Kathy Winchester, I think she had a great question on actually pivoting towards the Westminster Station, which I mentioned the other specific plan areas. So, yeah, Kathy, in fact, our team is, we're super excited. I got the very first project that's going to be a private development wrapping the Westminster Station Garage, which is a project that is near and dear to my heart because I worked on that for about 8 years as we were building all that infrastructure down there. But absolutely, we're super excited to see them start construction. They will have restaurants, with coffee shop, other retailers right near that transit stop, which will only just be a catalyst to the rest of the private developers in that area to reinvest into their properties and see some really great energy happen in right along that Westminster Station along the B line. So yeah, absolutely. In fact, I've seen emails today from that contractor developer on trying to find the time that they're going to be able to break ground and start construction on that first residential and commercial project around the Westminster Station on that B line stop.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
I do want to.
Yep.
Yep.
John, I'll even add to that too, that per council, and with the election that we had, a year or so ago, council authorized and went and sold bonds that are going to be used for additional park development. And one of the prioritized projects is England Park. That entire corridor through historic Westminster out towards the west. And we are just starting off at the planning component of that to try and address some of the original comments that have been made in the past with our public meetings and things like that. We'll be doing a lot more of that as we get into the process, but it's a significant dollar amount we'll be spending out there. That we're going to be looking for some ideas and thoughts. But again, it's another commitment to historic Westminster and upgrading what we have out there.
Yeah. Response. Anything else, Shelby, you want us to hit? Or we?
Sorry, I was letting you guys go. Before I circle back to other questions, I do want to note that Donna left a comment. This is not a question, but more of a comment. I'm so impressed with the development and appreciate the staff's work and dedication to making the site attractive and profitable. So thank you for that.
Go team, Donna. I mean, there's a whole tribe of us that work on this thing for years. So no, appreciate that, and yeah, very much appreciate that. And we'll just see great things happen and look forward to see everybody down at different events that John and his team are putting on to just, again, create that community. For me, that's what it's all about. Growing up in the area, just having a place to go, connect and see some really fun things. That's what it's all about.
Let's see. We had, I believe, 2 points left under Mario's question that he was looking for. Are the self-driving shuttles still planned for the park and ride underpass? And part 2 of that is, has the city considered developing the Western Sheridan Park and Ride parking lot after the underpass is complete?
Yeah, so no, great questions again, Mario. So yeah, the original plan was to have some sort of, we'll call them micro mobility from the parking lot of RTD through the downtown, and those self-driving shuttles was part of that. And I would just say, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think that's as the continued energy around the downtown, the number of residents, usability, I think there's going to be a time and place for those, either automated shuttles like we saw last year during COVID, just kind of running some of those things around. So yeah, absolutely. I think we'll see that down the road. As far as considering developing the Western Sheridan Park and Ride parking lot after it's complete, I think I understand what you're saying. So this is where the tunnel that's under construction now goes right into that parking lot, and that is RTD. So they do have plans to restripe and pave that area, but that is a RTD project, not a city project. So we've worked with them to draw those boundaries of kind of each project. And if I'm not mistaken, Seth Plass, who's the project manager for the Underpass, they have a website that is available, I think, through our city website, that you can get up-to-date information, look at plans, and understand the full scale and scope of that project as well. If you don't mind, Shelby, I'll just hit the one that he asked above that, which is the grocery store option. Yeah, and then we'll try to wrap it up here in a couple. But yeah, again, as Marzek is opening up, you will find, you say affordable grocery store. When you go into a Marzek's, and if you haven't been in there, there absolutely is an affordability component of that. It's not all, say $40 bottles of olive oil. They're really good curated uh, food and, sandwiches and, I think is grandma's potato salad. I mean, it's not a high-end, super expensive. It's boutique because it's not the place you're going to go get all your bulk toilet paper and things like that. You're in there for just very specific and curated either fruits and vegetables, sandwiches, to go things like that, as well as their curation of imported wines that'll be in their wine store. But back to the other question, which is, will there be maybe another grocery store in downtown? The answer is yeah, there's room. We've identified probably another, we could, could maybe a 20 or 30,000 square foot, not a massive super Target, Kroger, things like that, but maybe a Sprouts, maybe a Natural Grocers, maybe a Trader Joe's. Those are all folks that we have talked to that when we have the number of rooftops, the residents living there and the surrounding area, they will want to be there. And I think that's usually the grocery is one of the last things to come in. If you live in any community that's growing, you'll notice it's rooftops, then the retail, then the grocer, right? There's just a natural progression as you invest into those communities, and downtown Westminster is no different.
Thanks, John. Looks like we have one left. So this will be our final question for today. But again, doesn't mean that you can't still reach out to us if you think of anything wonderful at a later time. But Trevor had asked, are there any new restaurants coming soon? And Mario responded to it, not a restaurant, but a paint and sip will be opening next to the acai, I think it's John. I'm not sure. I think I still get it wrong. Fruit bowl place. So were you familiar with the paint and sip coming, and do you know of any new restaurants?
Yeah, no, and there are, and again, I'm always told, try not to disclose too much on the front end because you never know as restaurants are opened up. But yeah, there's a couple really, really good ones that I can't disclose yet because it's again not a city deal. It's a private developer that is bringing these restaurants in. But yeah, there's two that I know of right now that you'll be super excited. I'm going to tell you, Mario, the second weekend, or I can't remember who asked that, Trevor. The second we can announce that we will, because we are super excited to get more restaurants and get more of that energy around there. Again, unique to the area. They might be coming from different locations, some new. And so we're thrilled. And as soon as those are available, yeah, keep checking back to the Downtown Westminster, the EcoDevo website, and we'll be pushing those out through our social media channels as well, to our Facebook page. So yeah, stay tuned. I think this winter will be probably a lot of tenant improvement construction, but by this time next year, hopefully Shelby will invite us back to do another update. And if she does, we'll be more than thrilled to share a lot of the new energy around restaurants and retailers, service commercial in the downtown site.
Wonderful. I think at this point, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our webinar today. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. A huge thank you to our John and John for your time, knowledge, and for answering all of the questions, just to kind of keep everybody up to speed with what's going on down there. Lots of exciting projects and good things going on. So thank you, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.